Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Soy Stuart and welcome to this first video, Spain Speaks. Here in my car, I'm going to be more or less giving you an idea of what it's like to live in Spain, some of the pros, some of the cons, just while I drive around, sort of kill two birds with one stone. So on my way to the supermarket today, that's what we're going to do. So I'll just get organised here. I've got the seatbelt on, we'll put the car into gear and we'll get moving. Now the topic that I wanted to talk about today was working in Spain. It's probably a lot of people have considered or are considering coming to work in Spain, and you know, it's a country that has problems with the labour market, let's be honest. But having said that, it all depends on what you want to do, you know, what type of job you want to get, where you want to do it, and probably how ambitious you are. Now, my background is I originally come from Australia, you can probably tell from my accent, and I've been here in Spain now for 17 years, more or less. First came here in 1991, just on holiday, and over the years went back to Australia, to the UK, to a few different places, and then I decided to come here on a more permanent basis in 1998, so that's about 17 years. And working, well, as I said before, it all depends on what you do. I teach English, and that's what I've done since the day that I arrived, and I haven't been unemployed for the last 17 years, so I've always been able to work. There's always been jobs, there's always been classes. It's a little bit up and down, but you know, basically if you want to work, you can. Now there are some things that are good, some things bad. Obviously it's like any type of job, I suppose, but you know, teaching English has its pros and cons as well. It's fairly easy. You just have to have a basic knowledge of your own grammar, so you know, whether you're an English speaker or a person that speaks English fairly well, you could probably end up teaching English. There's a lot of demand for English here in Spain, which is one of the reasons why people like me have been able to work for the last 17 years without any real problems. And as I said before, you know, it sort of comes and goes. It's getting a little bit harder nowadays because there's a lot more competition out there than there was before, especially with the internet. Every man and his dog is now sort of popping up with an internet platform to try and sell their classes, and that's what really makes it a bit difficult. But as I said before, it's not too bad, and if you're willing to travel and look around and, you know, not expect to make $1 million, you'll be okay. As I said before, the secret to teaching English here in Spain is the demand. Spanish people traditionally have had problems to learn English, and everybody seems to be obsessed with English in some way, shape or form, and that's one of the reasons why there's been such a demand for teachers in the past. And I suppose it also depends on the city where you live as well. If you live in the big cities like Madrid, this car going past here at 150 k's an hour, like an idiot. If you live in the big cities like Madrid or Barcelona, technically it should be easier to get work than if you're living in one of the small cities, but this is where the problems come from. Because in the big cities, there's a lot less quality of life. Now, it's okay when you're young, because Madrid is a city that offers a lot of entertainment. There's a lot of bars, a lot of restaurants, a lot of nightlife, a lot of social activity. But when you have kids and you start to settle down, which is my case, then obviously a city like Madrid becomes a little bit less attractive, and you look for more quality of life. And in my opinion, I have this argument a lot with people here, not really an argument, but the discussion is that, you know, the quality of life in big cities like Madrid is not the same as it is in a smaller city. But the downside in a smaller city is that you're not going to be able to get to work. Whereas here in Madrid, where all the companies are, there's always going to be a lot of business classes, and as a result of those businesses, there's a lot of secondary classes because these people have kids, etc., etc. So depending on what you want to do, whether you want to teach adults or whether you want to teach kids, there's normally a lot of demand for that type of thing. Barcelona probably as well. I'm not sure what Barcelona is really like because I've never lived there, but I get the impression that it's probably fairly similar to Madrid. And maybe there's another 2 or 3 cities where you could do probably the same type of thing as well. As I said before, it's going to be a lot harder in a smaller city unless you're teaching purely on the internet or by telephone. And once I do my shopping, which is the purpose of this trip today, I'll give you a little bit more of an insight on that. So I'll just find a place to park the car. Alright, so once I've done this, I'll be back and we'll continue. Okay, so the shopping's done. We'll just resume the conversation. Now we got the police over there as well, so hopefully they won't stop me for talking. Now, okay, so where were we? Yeah, so working in Spain, as I said before, can be a bit of an adventure. Now, if you do, or if you want to do what I did, which was teach English, just to summarise, you shouldn't have a problem because there's still a lot of demand, although that demand becomes less and less each day. If you're looking to do something else, like get into the mainstream Spanish labour market, it's pretty much impossible unless you're in one of the areas where there's a lot of demand for English speakers. And what I mean by that is places like Malaga, Alicante, etc., where there's going to be a lot of businesses that are looking to get English speaking clientele. So in that sense you could probably get a job. The other thing about Spain is the salaries. In general, they're quite low. They're okay for the cost of living. The cost of living is not extremely high. It was a few years ago, especially when the euro first came in, but they've been dropping for the last but it's been dropping for the last 5 or 6 years. So more or less with 30,000 euros, you can live quite comfortably. So it's not an extravagant salary, but it's a salary, you know, that will allow you to live your day-to-day quite comfortably. Unemployment in Spain, that is the biggest problem. And this is why I said before, you're really going to have trouble probably to get a job in the normal Spanish labour market, simply because of the figures. Now I think currently they're around 24% for the normal labour market, and up to maybe in the high 40s, mid 40s for youth unemployment. So the odds are really stacked against you if you want to try to get a job competing with Spanish people. And again, the language is going to be the problem. Unless you speak Spanish fluently and you're able to get into that groove, get into that market, it's going to be very, very difficult. Maybe being bilingual, if that's your case, if you're fully bilingual, maybe you'll be okay. But somebody like me who's learnt Spanish as a second language, really it's very, very difficult. In fact, I know very, very few people that are working outside of the English or the ESL or the ELT or whatever you want to call it market in some way, shape or form. I've got a friend who works in a bank in Alicante, because again probably they were looking for some type of English speaker who was able to deal directly with a certain type of client, and that's the reason. Apart from he's probably a good worker as well, and speaking Spanish he's able to do both sides of the job quite well, but I imagine that originally that type of job he was chosen for was because of that language skill. So I mean, that is an opportunity. Again, I don't know how much money you would be making working in a bank. I think he's a bank manager, so maybe he's on, you know, quite a good wicket, but I'm not really 100% sure. Just going back to the ESL, I think I said that, you know, working in the big cities, there's always going to be jobs available. If you're going to come and work in a city like Madrid, the hours that you're going to be doing, if you're going to be doing company classes, normally you're going to have you're going to have a really long day. Normally the first class in the morning is going to be at 8 o'clock. If you can work through to 10 o'clock in the morning, you'll be lucky. If you can, probably then you'll get work around the lunchtime area between 1:30 and 4:30, and then in the afternoon. If you wanted to work with kids in an academy or with adults that go there after work, the hours are probably going to be around the 5 to 10 mark, so be prepared for that. The normal Spanish working day is also pretty terrible. Companies normally start at 9 o'clock in the morning and people finish anywhere from 6 to 8 in the afternoon, depending on, I suppose, you know, how high up you are in the company. So they're really long days. The people I give classes to in companies are starting at 8, 8:30 in the morning, and a lot of them are not getting home until 8:30 in the evening. Because they have a thing here in a lot of companies still, which is a 2-hour lunch break. I can't understand it myself. It just makes no sense at all to have a 2-hour lunch break. But Spain's a country where traditionally people like to have long lunches, mainly at the weekends, but for some reason, and I think it's mainly to do with the restaurants and the bars, that they pressure the government, or they pressure in some way these companies to maintain these long lunch hours. So what happens is that people are forced to take 2-hour lunch breaks. In, you know, one of the companies that I was working at teaching English, what people would do was that either before or after lunch they'd do sport. So I'd have lunch in half an hour, because I mean it doesn't take you any longer to have lunch. Even if you have a 3-course meal, half an hour is normally enough, maybe 40 minutes, and then the other hour and a half, or however long they, you know, still had to wait, they were going to the gym, or they were going for a run, or they were going for a walk, or whatever. It's absolutely crazy. But, you know, big companies, and the company I'm talking about is probably the biggest Spanish bank here, still gives its staff a 2-hour lunch break. I just can't work it out myself. But anyway, that's one of the things about living here in Spain. As I said, I mean, on the weekends I can understand it. You sit down for lunch at 2, 3-course meal, bottle of wine, a few beers, maybe a long drink afterwards, you know. It's 4:30. So yeah, so basically that's it. So to sum up, working in Spain, you want to teach English, yeah, no problem. The hours are going to be long, salary's not going to be that good. You'll be able to meet a lot of people that you wouldn't meet normally. If you do decide to do that, don't get stuck in the expat trap where all your mates are, or all your friends are, you know, Aussies or Americans or Canadians or English or Irish. Get out, try and meet some Spanish people if it's possible. And if you're going to try and get a job in the normal Spanish labour market, good luck. I can't really give any recommendations on how to do it, but just look at the facts. Huge unemployment, terrible job market, and salaries and working hours that are really not in line with anywhere else in Europe at the moment. So we're back again to where we started from. If you have any comments or any questions, just leave them below. Remember, you can follow us also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you like it, and I'll try to put one of these up every few days or every week at tops. Okay, thanks, see you later.